Hey guys, Matt Smith back here with you. Week 2 SEC preview video gambling lines and where I'm leading for Saturday's games. But we have to start, of course, the big one. Saturday night, 10 p.m. Eastern, Fort Collins, Colorado, home of New Belgium Brewing. The Vanderbilt Commodores 0-1, lost 23-3 to East Tennessee State last week. They're taking on the Colorado State Rams, who were blown out by South Dakota State 43-24. So a pair of teams who were non-competitive against FCS opponents last week. What a battle this will be. Colorado State is 7-point favorite. Given the late kickoff, the altitude, I'm going to roll with the Rams to make it another miserable week for Vanderbilt. At least South Dakota State's a really good FCS program. They're probably better than about 40 or 50 FBS teams. Played for the national championship in the spring, while East Tennessee State, who beat Vanderbilt, is just a run-of-the-mill average FCS team and beat Vanderbilt by 20. So lay the 7 points, take Colorado State, and that's all I'm going to talk about in that game. SEC opener, Saturday night in Lexington, Kentucky. Really pumped for this one. Missouri and Kentucky, two teams who were kind of battling it out for that number 3 spot during talking season in the spring and summer. I liked Missouri for most of the summer. I thought their quarterback situation was much more stable with this being a week 2 game with Connor Bazelak. I wasn't sure Kentucky would have their guy by this point. They do. It's Will Levis. He looked pretty good last week, albeit against a terrible Louisiana Monroe team. With some of his deep throws, there was decent coverage on that, and he hit those guys. They weren't just guys running wide open that any quarterback could connect with. He put the ball where it needed to be. So overall, I was really impressed for 1 week at least. Maybe this Kentucky passing game is evolving. Missouri's defense played a much better opponent in Central Michigan, struggled a lot. But I'm going to roll with the Tigers here. I like the stability of this offense. I'm a big Eli Drinkowitz fan. I think they go into what should be a pretty hostile environment in Lexington on Saturday night. I still have some concerns about Kentucky's defense. They're okay. They're solid. It's a Mark Stoops unit, so I'm not overly worried. But I don't see that real true difference maker like they've had in the past with your Bud Dupree's, your Josh Allens, and some of those guys in recent years. So good game. I know Kentucky's about a 5-point favorite, but I'm going to call for a mild upset. Missouri gets a win, going 28-24, something like that. Tigers pull it out on the road in Lexington. A couple big non-conference games. Texas, Arkansas. This is going to be fun. It's going to be an awesome atmosphere in Fayetteville. First really, truly big game with a packed house for Sam Pittman in his 2 years there. Texas looked really good in Sark's debut. Beat Louisiana Lafayette by 20 in what most of us thought would be a competitive game. Bijan Robinson, one of the best backs in the country. I expect a long touchdown in some form, running, catching, 50 yards or more in this game. But this Arkansas staff, ton of respect for Barry Odom, what he did last year with limited talent, limited depth on the defensive side of the ball. I think with that and the atmosphere there, the experience of the staff being together now, Texas still being in their second game with that staff, I'm going to call for the Hogs to win this one. It's going to be a wild night in Fayetteville. Texas always gets crowds fired up, gets teams fired up, and again, I just like the cohesion of this staff. They've always met the moment going back to last year, even when they were undermanned. They showed up and they maximized their talent. I think they do it again on Saturday night. KJ Jefferson using his legs to generate some offense. Arkansas wins this game, upsets Texas, and starts 2-0. A couple other big games to mention. Big, in quotes, I guess. Decent matchups, we'll say. NC State, Mississippi State, Saturday night. That's a fun one in Starkville. NC State, kind of a off the radar, you get what you expect team from Dave Doran. They're going to go somewhere between 7-5 and 9-3. Recruit pretty well, but never quite can elevate to that level of Clemson or even a North Carolina last year. Against a Mississippi State team who we don't know what the heck they're going to get week to week. Played a terrible first 3 quarters against Louisiana Tech. Got it together just in time to rally past the Bulldogs last week. So just so inconsistent. And because of that, I'm going to ride with the consistency of NC State. I like their 2 running backs, Ricky Person and Bam Knight. Devin Leary's very solid at quarterback. Pretty salty defense who pitched a shutout last week against USF. State's about a 2.5, 3-point road favorite there. I'm going to call for them to win and cover that by about 7 in Starkville. And a good 2-0 start for Dave Doran and the Wolfpack there. Texas A&M, Colorado, not super interested in this game. It's in Denver at Mile High, whatever it's called now. I don't know the new name. It's been 6 different things. Wish it were in Boulder. Wish they could have had the home and home, but the game in College Station last year got COVIDed out. So just a 1-game neutral site technically in Denver. A&M's offense, they got some kinks to work out. Haynes King had 3 interceptions last week against Kent State. So that'll be a growing process. Fortunately for them, not a real tough schedule until Alabama comes to town in the second week of October. But that defense looks really salty again. The Stars showed out last week. DeMarvin Leal, Leon O'Neal making some big plays. I think kind of a repeat performance of that, not buying into Colorado, a surprise team last year. But like we saw when they won the Pac-12 South in 2016, they were bad the year before and they were bad the year after. So I'm thinking last year is more of a mirage. I'm going the Aggies. I'm going to lay the 17, call for about a 35-13 win in Denver for Texas A&M. Pitt and Tennessee, kind of a fun matchup in Knoxville. Johnny Majors Classic, a start of a home and home. They'll play in Pittsburgh next year. I thought Pitt looked pretty good against UMass. Again, really bad opponent. But their skill position talent on the offensive side of the ball is pretty good. Fifth-year senior quarterback in Kenny Pickett. They got a mean, nasty nose tackle in Kalijah Cansey, I think is going to cause some problems for the Tennessee offensive line, particularly the interior of that group, which is still quite young and inexperienced, and a good challenge for this Tennessee receiving core, which I think we like overall. With that Pitt defense, a Pat Narduzzi group, they're going to get physical with you. They're going to dare the ref to throw flags. So those guys are going to have to make some contested catches. Joe Milton's accuracy, obviously a big concern coming out of the Bowling Green game last week. So I think a good number of points in this game. Pitt's defense, you never know, again, how the game's going to be called. Can those cornerbacks hold up on the islands? They're a pretty young group compared to the front four, which looks a lot stronger, I think. So I'm going to call for a good number of points, but I think Pitt, behind the steady hand of Kenny Pickett, outduels Joe Milton 35-27. I'm going to call for Pitt to go into Knoxville and win that game. Not a whole lot else on the SEC schedule. UAB Georgia. Would like to see the Georgia offense, obviously, show some more explosiveness. They had a plan last week. They executed. The defense was awesome. And they didn't really need to do a heck of a lot. But in the game, you know you're going to win against a pretty good UAB team, but it's Georgia. Let's see if that offense can get some of their receivers back and open up that passing game. Because if they're going to win a national title for the first time in 41 years, they're going to have to play a lot better on the offensive side of the ball than they did against Clemson. Let's see. South Carolina, East Carolina, interesting game. Neither team's that great. Disappointing first game, I thought, for East Carolina, losing to App State last week in Charlotte. South Carolina, Eastern Illinois, bad team. Who knows? We'll see what they get this week. East Carolina is actually a slight favorite. I like the Gamecocks at the line of scrimmage, and I think that'll be enough to prevent a loss on Saturday. I think Shane Beamer starts 2-0 and they pull it out. Pretty competitive game, 27-24. Pretty average football score, I would say, in that one. But I think the line of scrimmage, where South Carolina is actually pretty decent compared to where they are in the back end of that defense, I think will overwhelm an AAC team in the Pirates. Not much else. 5 other bad games. Alabama, Auburn, LSU, Ole Miss playing FCS opponents. Only real storyline there is LSU with Ed Orgeron coaching against his son, Cody, who's the quarterback for McNeese. But not much going on there. I think I'm missing one game. Let's see what we got here. Florida, USF. Cool game at the time that Florida would go to Tampa and play the in-state bowls, but that program has fallen on hard times since Charlie Strong had a couple successful seasons early on. Jeff Scott's only won one game in 1+ seasons. They got blown out by NC State last week. Florida should roll, pound it, do some work on the ground, make this a quick game, get your starters out, and get ready for Alabama next week. I guess we'll talk some of the national games as well. Oregon, Ohio State, I'm not sold this is going to be much of a game. I thought Ohio State would get pushed last week and actually lose was my bold prediction. Did not happen, but Gophers played well, led at halftime into the third quarter before the Buckeyes just used their incredible talent on the offensive side of the ball and pulled away. Oregon was not impressive against Fresno State. Anthony Brown, still don't buy into him as the quarterback. Kayvon Thibodeau, very much a question mark to play after an ankle injury suffered against Fresno State last week. So I think Ohio State rolls, and I'd be pretty comfortable laying those 14 points. Other games, Washington, Michigan, obviously lost a lot of luster with the Huskies getting upset by Montana last week, but still the big house. It's still 2 big brands at night. Should be a fun matchup, and that Washington defense is pretty salty. So a good test for a Michigan offense that looked pretty good last week. Did lose one of their best players in wideout Ronnie Bell to a season-ending injury. So I think that could be a struggle for the Michigan offense. It's about 6.5 right now, Michigan's favorite. I'm tempted to take those points. I think it's a low-scoring game. Michigan probably wins, but given the defenses, I think that's too many points to lay here. Holy War, after dark, actually a pretty good lineup on Saturday night. We got Stanford USC. Maybe that's a blowout, but we've seen some Stanford teams look like crap earlier in the year and then go play USC in mid-September and beat them. So not going to just check it as a win for the Trojans just yet, but USC a 17-point favorite there. And then the Holy War, as I just mentioned, Utah, BYU. Since they split from the Mountain West and Utah went to the Pac-12 and BYU went independent, Utah has dominated that series. BYU hasn't won since they were conference opponents back in the Mountain West in the 2000s, but it's in Provo. Still not quite sure what this Utah team is. BYU didn't look great against Arizona, but all those all-red Utah uniforms against those all-blue BYU uniforms, fun matchup. We'll try to stay up as late as I can to catch most of that one in Provo on Saturday night. Not a ton else, really. Pretty quiet week. Illinois, Virginia, that's an 11 a.m. Eastern kick, first game of the day. Kind of interesting. Illinois, not surprised they had a letdown after the Nebraska win. I thought they more just outcoached Nebraska rather than showed that they were a quality team. So coming back and losing to a really good UTSA team, not a big shock there. But an interesting matchup going on the road against Virginia. Air Force, Navy, 9/11, going to be an emotional day, obviously, on Saturday for all of us. CBS giving that game a spotlight in their normal 3:30 window that goes over to the SEC starting next week. But certainly an emotional day, and what a scene that'll be in Annapolis with Air Force and Navy on the 20th anniversary of 9/11. And I think that's all I really wanted to touch on. Actually, Rutgers-Syracuse is a pretty decent game, actually. Both teams look really good in week one. They'll meet up in the Carrier Dome, resurrect an old Big East rivalry, if you want to even call it a rivalry. But two teams who had bottomed out over the last couple of years appearing to be at least trending back upwards, closer to bowl teams perhaps. So winner of that game will start 2-0, and I think has a great chance to get to a bowl. Gambling lines this week, couple games I like. Rice, 8-point home dog to Houston. They played really well at Arkansas last week, led that game 17-7. Let it get away in the fourth quarter. That'll happen. Houston, I thought, looked really bad against Texas Tech, built an early lead. Were miserable in the second half. So with Rice getting more than a touchdown, it's at home, but it's a 10-minute bus ride for Houston. No real big deal there. But I like fading Dana Holgorsen, so getting more than a touchdown with an improving Rice team. I'll take the Owls to cover the 8. Liberty -5 at Troy. That seems light to me. Troy, we're not quite sure what they are in Chip Lindsey's third season now. But Liberty rolled last week. I'll give Hugh Freeze the benefit of the doubt. He's a really good football coach for what you think about him off the field. 5 points is just not enough. I think Liberty easily covers that number on the road down in Lower Alabama. Kind of a market correction game, I think, for Miami. -8 against a pretty good Appalachian State team, but I still think this Miami team is pretty solid. Everyone's going to get blown out by Alabama unless you're Clemson, Georgia, Ohio State. So no super worries about the Canes even coming out of that blowout loss to Alabama. -8 at home, I'll take them to cover that against a pretty good App State team. But again, I think the Canes were fairly ranked at 14-15, and I think they'll get back to that level once they recover from that Alabama beatdown last week. Washington, as I said, I like that 6.5 number at Michigan. Low-scoring game, maybe a 20-17 type game. Again, just too many points for what I think is a really good Washington defense. And a Michigan offense that still could be struggling a bit after losing Ronnie Bell last week. Cal TCU, that was a game I pointed to all summer. It could be a compelling matchup. They were supposed to play last year. Obviously didn't happen because of COVID. Cal's getting 10 points. They did lose to Nevada last week, but I really like Nevada as a potential group of 6 buster if Cincinnati's not that team. So getting 10 points, I think, with Cal's defense and Justin Wilcox, always a good defensive mind. I think that's too many points. So I'll take those 10 points with Cal when on the road to Fort Worth. So that's about it for the Week 2 preview. Again, it's okay. A couple good ones early with Oregon, Ohio State potentially, and an interesting Pitt-Tennessee game. Late afternoon window. Oh, my God, I didn't even talk about Cyhawk. Game of the week. Iowa State, the game day game. One of the best rivalries that has gotten a big boost in the last couple of years. Game day was there 2 years ago for their last meeting in Ames. Kind of a weird weather game, bunch of lightning delays. Hopefully smoother sailing this week in Ames. 3:30 Central, 4:30 Eastern, kind of a unique kickoff time there with ABC pushing their games back a little bit due to 9/11 coverage in the morning. A lot of tailgating, maybe some fights. Love that rivalry. Iowa's had the upper hand in the Matt Campbell era, so this kind of feels like I'm dating myself here, but back in 1998, Kansas State hosted Nebraska. K-State was undefeated, could never get over the hump and beat Nebraska to take control of the Big 12. And even though this is a non-conference game, Iowa State has this monkey, this black and gold monkey on their back in Iowa. They need to get off. I think they'll take care of it. I think Iowa State wins the game. But a fun matchup. Iowa's defense looked fantastic last week against Indiana. So can't wait for this one. And I can't believe I let this one for the end. So we'll go out on the high note with Iowa State, the game of the week, of course. So thanks so much for watching, guys. Please follow me on Twitter at MattSmithCFB. Please subscribe. Let me know in the comments below what you think about the games this weekend. I'll be back probably sometime Sunday for the Week 2 recap. And thanks so much for watching, and I will talk to y'all soon.